Jose Rizal left Europe for some reasons. One, his life was unbearable in Europe because of his political differences with Marcelo H. del Pilar, and second, to be near to his beloved country and family. He even wrote in his diary, I know that it is a very unwise step. Nevertheless, something is pushing me. On the 18th of October 1891, Rizal embarked on the Melbourne for Hong Kong. Rizal took advantage of the life on board to socialize, exchange views, and above all, to observe closely the colonizers. During the trip from Marseilles to Hong Kong, Rizal had discussed the idea of colonization with the Englishman Mr. William B. Pryor, who with his wife, Ada, was on their way to North Borneo.
Rizal, we have to go somewhere. Rizal, sure. Next meeting, Rizal.
Oh, hello. May I join you?
Sure, you must be.
Oh, I'm Rizal.
Pleased to meet you. I'm William Pryor and this is my wife, Ada Pryor.
We are both Englishmen and we are on our way to North Borneo.
North Borneo. It may sound interesting. It is not good to ask you. What do you think about the political status of North Borneo right at the moment?
There is one part of Borneo not led by English, which is independent of England, but being at a control there is not the status of
I was attracted to the state of North Borneo. Would it be possible if Filipino people can ship the people?
It suggested to Rizal's quick mind the bold but quite feasible idea of moving the dispossessed families of Calamba, his own family included, to a new life in North Borneo, where they would be free of Spanish and church tyranny. Meanwhile, when the SS Melbourne arrived at Singapore, Rizal bid goodbye to Mr. and Mrs. Pryor, who proceeded to Sandakan, the small port of British North Borneo. As the goodbyes were said, the matter of the possible establishment of the colony was left pending. The Melbourne, after a violently rough crossing of the South China Sea, brought him to Hong Kong on November 19, 1891. Hong Kong's climate is warm. In the summer, the temperature reaches 35 degrees, a reading that is quite ordinary for Filipinos. The relative proximity to his native land, the racial affinity, the liberty of professional practice, and the opportunity for the family to travel, all these were other attractions for Rizal. Jose Maria Basa had prepared a room for him in a lodging house at the bottom of Dowdall Street, in the heart of downtown Victoria. However, the atmosphere of the place was not to Rizal's liking. But after some time, when he had established a steady clientele, he moved to a first-floor space with a more decent neighborhood. When the Spanish authorities in Manila knew that Rizal was returning to the east, it was decided to remove the deportees, Pasiano and his brother-in-laws, to Zulu Islands. While on their way, because of a highly organized and well-executed plan, all of them escaped. On the 6th of December, the father of Rizal, his brother Pasiano, and his brother-in-law Silvestre Obaldo, who evaded deportation to Mindoro, arrived in Hong Kong, but their mother could not do the same. Now aged 64 and almost completely blind, she had been made to walk the hallway. The civil governor then ordered her immediate release upon seeing her state. Later on, she was permitted to leave the country. Shortly before Christmas, accompanied by her daughters, Lucia, Josefa, and Trinidad, she reached Hong Kong. Shortly after the end of the year, Rizal received a visitor, an Augustinian friar whom he did not know. Rizal received him well. He stayed for a couple of hours, asking many questions and engaging Rizal in a long discussion. Meanwhile, the family of Rizal was very happy. Jose earned good money, and Pasiano found a little house for them from which they could enjoy the panoramic view of the bay. The Rizal family in Radnacela Terrace, from which, according to Jose, his father contemplated the sea and watched the boats. From Paris came the news of the creation of a revolutionary organization called Katipunan. Concurrently, Rizal, on his account, founded a nationwide society to be called La Liga Filipina. He decided definitely to pursue the Borneo project and drew up a proposed contract, virtually a treaty, between the Filipino colony and the British North Borneo Company, which would give the colony considerable autonomy and would require ratification by Great Britain as the protecting power. On the strength of this invitation, Rizal decided to go to Sandakan, but before he did that, he wrote a letter to the newly replaced, more liberal Governor General Eulogio Despujol, who began his governorship by announcing a high-sounding program of reforms. Rizal believed that somehow he must return in the Philippines sooner, whatever the views of his family, friends, and of the propaganda. He saw this as an opportunity to start with. On 23rd of December 1891, he wrote a personal letter to Despujol in which he said in part, the letter must have hit Despujol like a dart. It was well written, composed in faultless exposition, but in between the respectful lines, he had referred to the Governor General's failure to reply his letter, insinuated that the procedure of illegal deportation was unjust and that whoever decreed them carried the burden of responsibility of his conscience. Upon his arrival in Hong Kong, he was notified that the Spanish consul wished to interview him. This fool had not wanted to answer Rizal's letters in writing for fear of compromising himself, nor to give publicity to the aspirations of the would-be settlers as well as their intention to renounce the Spanish nationality. The consul, through Despujol, cursed his reply, informed Rizal that the Governor-General had received his letter but that he considered the Borneo project anti-patriotic and that he strongly rejected it. He also insinuated to Rizal that it would be wise for him to return to the Philippines, but when he asked for the Governor-General's assurance of his liberty as a citizen, the consul was evasive. He said nothing to anyone about giving up the Borneo project. If he came out of the Philippines alive, he might wish to pursue it further. In Hong Kong, Rizal's family is happy in spite of the past vicissitudes. Jose Rizal became more radical than before. Due to the events in Calamba, the persecution of his family, and the repression of the Whaler administration. The concrete manifestation of this change of ideology to a leftist tendency is il filibusterismo itself, and this is supported by the verbal testimony of General Alejandrino on the innermost thoughts of Rizal. Returning to Hong Kong, we find the family of Rizal installed in a house of Ragnacela Terrace, which Pasiano, with the help of his sisters, had beatified. The neighborhood was middle class, peopled mostly by Portuguese families from Macau, nearby Portuguese colony. Here, Rizal met a good neighbor, Dr. Lorenzo Pereira Marquez, born in Macau, of British nationality, who studied Dublin, Ireland, and subsequently settled in Hong Kong. It so happened that Marquez was keenly interested in migration, having already submitted to the prison authorities a scheme for the migration to North Borneo of Chinese criminals capable of reform. With a joint interest in republicanism, revolutions, and migration, Rizal and Marquez became close friends. Encouraged further by a letter from Ada, the wife of Prior, whom Rizal describes as energetic, authoritarian, and with certain degree of masculinity, on the 13th of January 1892. Rizal ends the letter by saying that if he is granted permission to immigrate, he would go to the Philippines to sell his few properties there and then to thank Despujol personally. His second letter to Despujol, on the face of it simple, is actually very clever. Rizal arrived at North Borneo. Sandakan, still in its early days, was little more than a village, though quietly flourishing one, with its Chinese bazaar and the wooden houses of Europeans rising on the low hills around it. With boats laid on for him by Prior, he visited various possible developments sited and observed the problems of jungle clearance and human settlement. Most important of all in his eyes was to obtain written assurances from the government that there were no inequalities in regard to laws and succession, no compulsory military service or forced labor, no arbitrary fees on such things as machinery, buildings, and boats, and Prior's words, the governor was away on leave and the acting governor, L.P. Beaufort, was on tour. So Rizal entered negotiations with the acting government secretary, Alexander Cook, who also had to specify in writing the conditions of the settlement. These were, in general, along the same lines as drafted by Prior. But Rizal noticed that Prior and Cook were not quite compatible. He arranged an interview with Cook alone.
Dear Don Jose, the governor refuses to confirm Cook's action in offering you the 5,000 acres of free land, so you will not be able to have it. Yours in haste, William D. Prior.
The last two words, but it, were crossed out, and the letter ended thus. When he received a letter, in a moment of vexation, he wrote to Prior complaining, in a friendly and discursive reply, Prior assured him there were none.
No, North Borneo is the only place you can come to, and you can make better terms with us than you can with anyone else.
Upon his arrival in Hong Kong, he was notified that the Spanish consul wished to interview him. This fool had not wanted to answer Rizal's letters in writing for fear of compromising himself, nor to give publicity to the aspirations of the would-be settlers as well as their intention to renounce the Spanish nationality. The consul, through this fool, cursed his reply, informed Rizal that the Governor-General had received his letter but that he considered the Borneo project anti-patriotic and that he strongly rejected it. He also insinuated to Rizal that it would be wise for him to return to the Philippines, but when he asked for the Governor-General's assurance of his liberty as a citizen, the consul was evasive. He said nothing to anyone about giving up the Borneo project. If he came out of the Philippines alive, he might wish to pursue it further. In Hong Kong, Rizal's family is happy in spite of the past vicissitudes. He delayed his departure in order to be able to celebrate with his family his 31st birthday on June 19. Beginning with June 19, 1892, many important events took place. With only 2 or more days of his departure, Rizal wrote a number of letters. These letters reveal his overwhelming feeling that he was returning home to give his life for his country. In Hong Kong, he wrote on June 20, 1892, the first letter addressed to his beloved parents and friends. The importance of the letter, as well as the shortness of time, made him decide not to mail it. Instead, he gave the letter to Dr. Lorenzo Pereira Marquez, closed and sealed for safekeeping, with the instruction that upon his death, he gave it to the addresses.
To the Filipinos, the step I have taken, or which I am about to take, is without doubt very risky, and needless to say, I have given it much thought. I know that almost everybody is against it, but I also know that very few are conscious of what lies in my heart. I cannot live on knowing that because of me, many are suffering persecution. I cannot live on seeing my brothers and their numerous families persecuted like criminals. I prefer to face death and gladly give my life if only to free so many innocent people from such unjust persecution. I know that this point that the future of my country hinges partly on my actuations. I know that with my death, many will triumph, and therefore, many are wishing for my perdition. But what can we do? I have my duties of conscience. First of all, with the family that suffer with my aged parents, whose sighs reach my innermost heart. I know that I alone can make them happy, even with my death, in order that they may return to their native land and to the peace of their homes. I have no one but my parent, but my country has many more sons who can take my place and who are now taking my place to advantage. Furthermore, I want to show those who deny us patriotism that we know how to die for our duties and for our convictions. What matters death if one dies for what one holds dearest, for one's country and for the people one's love? If I were sure that I am the only support of the political situation in the Philippines, if I were sure that the Filipinos would utilize my services, I would hesitate in taking this step. There are some who consider me unnecessary and who think that my services are not needed. Hence, they have rendered me inactive. I have always loved my unfortunate motherland. Whatever be my fate, I shall die blessing her and wishing for the dawn of her redemption. Let these letters be published after my death. Jose Rizal.
Rizal collected his passport from the Spanish consulate and later the same day, accompanied by his widowed sister, Lucia, embarked for Manila. When the Spanish consul was informed that the ship had sailed with Rizal safely aboard, he enabled to the Governor-General, "The rat is in the trap." He arrived in Manila at noon on June 26, 1892. There, the Carabineers, headed by a commandant, a captain, and a lieutenant of the Guardia Civil Veterana, and a surgeon in civilian clothes were there. It can be affirmed that a big representation of the police force had come to receive a dangerous man. In the afternoon, at 4, Rizal proceeded to Malacañang Palace, residence of Governor-General Julio Despuol A. Dusay, Count of Casp since 1883, and Lieutenant General of the Spanish Army.
I will give permission to your father, Francisco Mercado, to return to Hong Kong unharmed, and Pasiano, the brother of yours, might return and present himself, and a decision will be taken. have liberal policies, but I am extremely unpopular with the friars.
That you are treated like an authority. If that's the case, then be the prior to receive session in your session.
I bet they're working hard in Madrid to secure my removal in this office, but I couldn't ignore the friars. Still, I don't intend making up my mind because of you. Before I forget, do you have plans of returning to Hong Kong?
Yes, I do. About the morning of session.
Visit me again tomorrow. You're still returning to Hong Kong?
Yes.
You bring in your baggage some lessons against the friars?
Oh, I did it.
What about this? To whom the mats and pillows in your room at your stay at Hotel de Oriente belong to?
That's for my sister.
And so, you're making me conclude that you throw the blame to your sisters. Because of this, I want to inform you that you are under arrest.